What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode review for Bleach, the 1,000-Year Blood War. This is episode 3, and with me, as always, I have Blue Spade.
hmm Um, I thought this episode was pretty decent,
Yeah.
but in my opinion, I kind of thought some of the pacing was, I don't know, it kind of was a little bit off at times, particularly when they did some of the exposition about the history of the Soul Reapers and the Quincy's.
Yeah, I was going to mention, so I'm not a manga reader, or at least I haven't read the manga up to this point, so I don't know if this is something that they added in exclusively in the anime, but basically we get another exposition, more exposition about the Quincy's that we actually got at the beginning of the original series, and that's kind of the same exact explanation that we have gotten about the Quincy's. Basically, that the Quincy's ideology differs from the Soul Reapers and how they, the Soul Reapers exercise the Hollows, and the Quincy's will just eliminate them entirely. And they basically were exterminated or genocided by the Soul Reapers. It's kind of like we'd actually already known this because it was explained in the beginning of the series, and it kind of seems like almost the exact same explanation. So I was kind of, it could be something that is in the manga, but it feels almost like it's a scene that was put in to, I guess, kind of remind people of like who the Quincy's are and like what, their history. Because maybe I guess some people might have forgotten about it if they hadn't read the manga or seen the anime in a while.
Yeah.
So
Yes. And there was this one scene involving Mayuri and Captain Yamamoto talking about what to do about the Quincy's, and
I think
Mayuri
people were saying this might be an anime original scene.
He even told warned Yamamoto that he should have killed Yawak, I guess centuries or 1,000 years ago. I can't remember what exactly.
Yeah,
he said 1,000 years ago, right?
Well, Mayuri basically, and I did forget his name the last episode, but yeah, Mayuri. He basically was explaining, like, because we didn't really know what was going on with those disappearances in the Rukon district, but I think he pretty much said like he had to like get rid of certain, like, I guess people in the Rukon district to balance out all the hollows that had been eradicated by the Quincy's or something, because otherwise, because as we get to explain later, the hollows have to be exercised and go to the Soul Society or wherever they end up going in order to maintain the balance. Otherwise, because if the Quincy's were just able to eliminate or just kill all the hollows, then the universe would be thrown off balance, and like this whole society would start to integrate into the real world, and it would be absolute chaos.
Yeah. And also Yamamoto, of course, sets up another meeting with the captains and decides to declare war on the Quincy's. However, they don't have any information of where the Quincy base is, so they have to go by supposedly that information where they were told that the Quincy's will attack within 5 days or so, which is certainly not the case based on what happens at the end of the episode. But yeah, much.
They also mentioned they would have to be prepared for a sneak attack or something as well.
Yeah, that too. But much of the episode, I guess it mostly tries to focus on the battle between Ichigo and this Quincy. I think
Kilgay, I think his name is.
Remember how to pronounce his name? Kilgay. So they end up facing off against each other, and Ichigo is, of course, surprised. He obviously knows that he's fighting against Quincy's, but he's also surprised that their style of weapons aren't always like a bow and arrow like Uryu uses.
Yeah, and it's also surprising, like that. I mean, we learned that the Quincy's, of course, know who Ichigo is, and they're kind of like he's a target for them to get rid of, basically. And they also know about Uryu. So they I guess they have been like maybe like watching them for a while, or like know who they are.
And Kilgay mentions that his power level or his ability level far exceeds Uryu in some cases, and
Mm.
it's obviously proven how incredibly powerful he is based on like what kind of abilities he uses. Basically the battle just starts off with them like clashing swords here and there until the battle gets interrupted by what was it, those three other
I think it's like the
Haran cars.
Trespian or whatever they're called.
I think they call it Tres Bestias.
Tresbestia, yeah.
Yeah, so they sacrifice their left arms to combine into this giant hollow ogre thing, which initially like it gets the upper hand, but Kyoge just like even when his with his neck broken or whatnot, it's like he's able to recover incredibly easily. And one of his abilities, I guess it absorbs the reishi from all over the place, and it fuses into him into this like almost this like half Quincy, half hollow type being.
It also looked like he might have killed one of those Arankar girls too.
Maybe,
I don't know.
assuming if like how bad the wound is, but I don't know. Maybe they some of them have come back from worse, but
That's true.
it depends. But yeah, he just like not only does he absorbs the reishi from the giant hollow, but also the members of the Tres Bestias, Orihime, Chad, and her like what was it, her I can't remember Orihime's ability, what it was called again.
Shoten Keshun or something like that.
Yeah, it absorbs like much of her shielding or healing field, and of course he absorbs it into himself. Before he can like unleash his his ultimate attack or whatever ability he was about to use, Ichigo comes up from behind and tries to destroy like this, I guess this disc in his head. Apparently, that could be a weak point from target, but of course, the battle just pretty much leaves us off in a cliffhanger, I guess.
They also hit him with
Once,
the Getsuga Tensho once as well.
yeah, but it didn't really seem to affect Kyoge because it just stops right at his neck and just doesn't really cut him for whatever
Yeah, it
reason.
seemed like he had like two transformation states, like that. The one at the beginning of the episode where he has the wings, and then like later on when he absorbs that hollow. Yeah, it was just kind of interesting. But yeah, most of the episode is kind of like cutting between this fight as well as what's going on in the Soul Society, and we also get to see this, which I believe what everybody was saying this is an anime original content with Uryu, where he's like looking into who the Waldenreich is, and he's kind of like wandering around his the library in his residence trying to find any information about it, because of course, as we kind of saw in the earlier episodes, like based on Uryu's reaction, he kind of knows what's going on and that these people are Quincy's. So he's wondering like why the Quincy's are here, because as far as he knows, he's like the last remaining Quincy. Or him and his father are, and his father asks like what he's doing, and there's kind of just like this argument, which pretty much boils down to like his father saying like you shouldn't get involved, and Uryu's like trying to ask him about it. Obviously, like his father knows more, but he won't tell Uryu anything. But his father ends up saying like you won't find the information you're looking for in the library. So Uryu decides to go into his father's study, where he finds some kind of some book, but we don't really get to know much about like what's in it. He again confronts his father about it, and his father kind of has pretty much the same response, and then Uryu just runs off. So that's pretty much the extent of the new content. I guess in the manga this was not in the manga. Without spoiling anything, I guess this was probably put in here to explain Uryu's actions later on in the story arc.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't read the manga of this particular story arc, so other than a few details of what happens in the beginning and the end, but I'm mostly going into this as an anime original person. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, the end of the episode, of course, shifts us back to the Soul Society, in which you walk, of course, goes to the Soul Society and initiates his attack on on the Seirite. And of course, immediately all hell breaks loose, and one of the Soul Reapers, particularly, yeah,
Kira.
what was it? Kira gets like completely blasted in the chest, and supposedly gets killed off immediately. That's assuming if before we recorded, you're assuming that
I was saying that before there were other characters that had suffered like really similar, almost like injuries that should have killed them at least. Like for instance, it's not like these aren't really shown in the anime because the original anime was censored to an extent. So during the Fake Karakura Town arc, there is actually like Rangiku suffers a very similar injury where she gets like a really huge hole in her side, and Hiyori, one of the Vizards, gets cut in half. Like half of her body gets, like her torso is just separated from herself. So, and she survives that, of course. So I don't know. It's possible like Kira could survive, but yeah, it is pretty. Yeah, if this is what kills him, it's a pretty unceremonious. Like he gets killed off pretty unceremoniously. But I guess the same could be said about Sasakibe.
Yeah, and and of course, this is where the episode ends off with introducing just a variety of different Quincy's we have never seen before.
Well, and we also like finally get to see Rukia again, where she just is reacting to what's going on.
Yeah, it's weird that it's been a while since we've seen Rukia for the first time since since the arc started. But I'm glad they brought her back, and hopefully they'll we'll get to see her again in action probably by the next episode, assuming of what's going to happen.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought it was a pretty decent episode. There are some people that were also saying like the fighting animation wasn't as great. I thought it was okay. Maybe not as good as it has been, but I thought it was fine. But I think the more concerning thing is just the amount of stuff they're cutting. It's possible they could like rearrange things. Like I think they had been doing that with some scenes that they'd cut from the anime. So maybe there's still the chance they could put it back in and like maybe the next episode or sometime later.
Yeah. I think my only issue with this episode is just the some of the pacing and the exposition that shifts back and forth between the what happens in Waco Mundo and the Soul Society.
Yeah. I felt like I don't know. I felt like the exposition about the Quincy's was a bit unnecessary, honestly. Like I understand why they did it, but I feel like if they were to kind of like, maybe cut anything just to replace it with something else, it could have been that on it, to be honest.
I mean, to be fair, it's like it has been 10 years since the show.
Yeah, which been on air. I think is the main reason why it's in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was a good episode. Maybe not the best one so far, but I thought it was still good.
Yeah.
I don't know how you have anything else to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, I like the action. I didn't think there was anything particularly wrong with it. It's just I really wish they could have I don't know. It's just like most of the time when they shift back and forth between the Soul Society and and the fight between Ichigo and Kyuuge, it kind of I don't know. It kind of it just disrupted the action most of the time. So like.
Yeah, because we do have like this fight scene happening while all this other stuff is also happening at the same time, and it's kind of like it just feels like there's so much happening at once.
Yeah, I just hope they just focus on like one particular area without having to shift us back and forth over and over again. Because I would really, if this were to happen in the next episode, I would really love to see just like one half of the episode focus on. The continuing fight between Ichigo and Kyuuge, and then shift us back to the Soul Society. But if they just constantly just shift us back and forth over and over again, it's gonna cause some amount of confusion and make a mess of the story at times.
Yeah, because if you remember, like at least in the original series, it was pretty easy to follow. Like because there was like if they were in one place, it would just kind of stay there, and it wouldn't be like showing us everything else that's going on. But I think like probably in the next episode it won't be like that because now we're going to mostly be focused on the invasion of the Soul Society, as well as like I guess Ichigo's fight with Kyuuge.
Yeah.
And then I guess maybe whatever Uryu might be up to in the world of the living. I mean, that's the only thing that kind of concerns me is like they might transition back to that, and then it would also just be it'll just be a little bit more confusing because we're like focusing on like 3 different things at once to what these characters are up to. So I don't know. Hopefully in the next episode it'll improve in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I guess we'll have to wait until next week to find out what happens then.
Yeah. So that being said, until next time, guys, we will see you all later.